Welcome again to Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture, and on today's show, we're going to talk about a great 80s album. It's The Cars with Heartbeat City. Kind of goes along with our Valentine's month theme. This album came out in 1984, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the background. We're going to talk about the release, and then I'm going to talk about a few of the songs and the videos for this great, fantastic album. So, this was the fifth studio album by The Cars, who's a new wave band who had a lot of success with their initial album. But one of the problems that they had was the previous album before, Shake It Up, did not do so well in the charts. And at the time, it was 1984. As I'm recording this in February, in a couple weeks in March, this album will be 40 years old. But back then in 1984, you had to have top 40 hits, and you had to have, a lot of them so that you would, your album would be successful and you could get another deal and you could keep moving into the business. So that's what we said in the Huey Lewis album. That ranged true here for The Cars. And there was just a huge impetus on having a successful album. And, when you look at this one, they made some key changes in order to do that. And one of the key changes that they did for this album was to switch producers. And it was their first record that was not produced by their longtime producer, Roy Baker. And they opted to go with a producer who's produced several albums, Robert John, also known as Mutt Lange. And he helped them out on this album, and it to great success. The prior release, Shake It Up, is a good album, has some good songs on it. Shake It Up is a great song. However, it was panned by the critics because basically what they said was it was underwhelming. It was nothing new. It didn't deviate from their planted semi-robotic pop. It didn't move them forward. It was more of a conservative type album that said, hey, let's keep doing what we're doing instead of stretch the boundaries. This album stretched the boundaries in a lot of different ways, not only with the sound of the album, but they also stretched the boundaries with the videos, as we're going to talk about coming up. One of the significant things about this album is how the critics responded to it. So, music critic Robert Christiano noted that the glossy approach the Cars invented has made this the best year for pure pop in damn near 20 years, and it's only fair that they should return so confidently to form, which is a high compliment for this. Numerous tracks from the album received airplay on modern rock and AOR stations. Drive and You Might Think hit the top 10. Magic was just outside of the top 10, and we'll talk about all three of those songs. It peaked at number 3 on the Billboard charts, the album did. So, this album was probably one of their best albums. Their first album's probably up there too because their first album had so many great hits. But Rick Ocasek reflected on this album not long after it was put out, and it was interesting to hear his take because they used a lot of revolutionary technology on the record. And he basically said that, hey, they use stuff that we kind of take for granted today because we use it in every aspect of engineering, making albums, making recordings on YouTube. They used Fairlight samplers, Lindrums. They used minute vocal editing. The brick-by-brick construction of songs was coming together at the time that they recorded this album. They used all these, and all these were new techniques at the time. They even used computer-generated images in their music video, which is revolutionary for the time, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But all of this was fascinating. It was going in a different direction, and Rick Ocasek said at the time that he wasn't sure about that because you still had to write and produce and make songs that people would want to hear. That the technology was a lift in the shoe, but you still had to do the work. And he joked that the Cars, put so much in this album that they nearly broke up 4 or 5 times. And at times they weren't all in the studio because of the way they were recording the album. Anyway, they did get it done. It was a smash hit. It's a great album. One of my favorites. Let's talk more about the release. So like I mentioned before, this album was released on March 13, 1984. And Like we mentioned, it had 6 singles reach the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at numbers 3 and, well, 2 hit the top 10, peaking at 3 and 7. That's Driving, you might think. But you had 6 singles that got airplay out of this, which is just amazing. 6 out of 10 is phenomenal, especially for that day. You were lucky to get 1 or 2, and then you had to move on to your next album. But to have 6 is great and fantastic. A number of songs from the album gained significant radio and television exposure, notably Drive, You Might Think, and Magic. They were in heavy rotation on MTV. We'll talk about their videos in a moment. I'm sure you probably have seen them if you grew up during that time, because they were played over and over again. The title track was the album's 6th and final single outside of North America. Despite not being released as a single, It's Not the Night reached number 31 on the top rock tracks charts. The song Stranger Eyes was used in a theatrical trailer for Top Gun. One of the first trailers for Top Gun in 1986 used this track, but it never made it on the soundtrack, unfortunately. Looking for Love was also covered by Falco, and you may remember him from Rock Me Amadeus. He's an Austrian singer, and that was his big American hit, so he covered this song as well. One of the interesting things is we mentioned that Mutt Lange produced this. Well, Mutt Lange also at the time was a big producer for Def Leppard. He had produced Paranoia, and because he was working on this, he really couldn't help them out with their latest album, Hysteria, which is a smash hit for them. However, Hysteria had some production delays, even without Mutt Lange there. And after he finished with the Cars, he went on to produce Hysteria. So he got to do that album and this album by the Cars. So it just showed how in demand he was and how great a producer he was. The cover art is pretty cool, and you saw it on the previous slide we had here. It had an image of a 1971 Dodge Plymouth Duster 340 and an Alberto Vargas pinup model. And it's a 1972 piece by Peter Phillips called Artomatic Loop-de-Loop, where you see the girl kind of folded over doing a loop-de-loop, which is really cool, unique artistry. It's kind of a catchy album cover when you first see it, because you're like, wow, what's going on there? Kind of neat. So really interesting. I couldn't mention this album without mentioning Live Aid. And Live Aid was huge back then in 1985. It was to raise money for starving people in Africa, and they raised a ton of funds. And the Cars performed at Live Aid, and they played 3 songs from the album, You Might Think, Drive, and the album's title track, Heartbeat City. And then they also sang another one of their famous songs, Just What I Needed, on there. So 3 of the 4 songs they sang at Live Aid were from this album, which is really cool because it came out the year before, and it showed just how successful that album was. And, you know, the Live Aid concert, we'll talk a little bit more about it, particularly a specific song that really got a lot of play for the Live Aid and really helped drive a lot of funding for Live Aid. And it's just so remarkable. I'm so glad they did it. And it's one of the great things about this band. This band is a unique band because they really didn't fit into, they had a lot of new wave and synth, but they had their own unique sound. And that's what made the Cars great. They had so many great songs and so many unique sounds. And we're going to get into those songs and that sound next. So the first song we're going to talk about is song number uno on this Heartbeat City album. It's called Hello Again. And this song is a fascinating introduction into the album, because it has all kinds of unique sounds and unique ways that they did it. They used a lot of the digital stuff on this song. It kind of reminded me of Moving in Stereo from a previous album, which is another great song by the Cars. But anyway, it was released in October of 1984. It was the 4th single off the album, and it was the 4th top 20 entry from the album, reaching number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. It also reached number 8 on the Hot Dance Disco depth chart and number 22 on the top rock track charts. Uh, it's sung by Rick Ocasek, and it's just a fascinating song. One of the writers for Billboard wrote that "Hello Again" goes back to the staccato synth beat and the wiry mannered style that typified the group's singles uh, before Drive, which is another song we'll talk about, changed all of that. So really, really complimentary about this song. And this song is very catchy. You may recognize the beat. I mean, it just has such a unique sound to it. Hello Again was retrospectively described as eccentric by AllMusic critic Gregory Prato, who also cited the track as a highlight from Heartbeat City. They also, several critics said it was one of their strongest tracks on Heartbeat City, and it was a stylish new wave rocker. So this is really in the new wave experimental touches, and it has a lot of experimentation in it. And, they were at the forefront of using some of this technology. And you can take what you hear in this and really apply it to later on and later music that used a lot more techno and digital and synth type technology, because this is where kind of a lot of it originated with the Cars and with this song. The music video is completely unique. It was directed by Andy Warhol and Don Moreau, and you can actually see Andy Warhol made a cameo in it as the bartender. You see him in the middle picture here, holding up the sign "Hello." So Warhol appeared in the video as the bartender, which is filmed at the Bebop Cafe in Manhattan. Diane Brill and John Sex of downtown New York scene made cameos. Then unknown Gina Gershon also appeared in the video. Keyboardist Greg Hawkins said, "I think Warhol mainly did some of the most conceptualizing, and it showed up to be an extra. And he invited his various friends to be in it. It was like any other video shoot, but with a more interesting cast of characters, and you could always go look and say, oh, wow, that's Andy Warhol." So very interesting video. Check out this video. Great song to start the album, and just a fascinating listen. Go listen to it if you haven't. Look on YouTube. The video is on there. It's really cool. Let's move on to the next song. Okay, the next song on here is Magic. And if you, like me, grew up with MTV, you would recognize this song. You would recognize this video because it got played all over MTV. It was released in May of 1984. It was the second single off the album. It reached number 12 on the U.S. charts on the Billboard. So not quite the top 10, but it was really, really close. It was number 1 on the Billboard Top Tracks chart. The track was written by Rick Ocasek and produced by Mutt Lange. Ocasek also sang the lead vocals on this. And the video is so unique. So it's set at a pool party, as you can see in some of these pictures. And it features Ocasek walking on water. And you see him walking on water in several scenes. And various characters gather and marvel at him. And towards the end of the video, some of the guests try and go out and walk on water too. And they end up falling in the pool. It was interesting. It was unique. The Cars in these videos for these next 3 songs really got experimental, really did a lot of unique things, especially the next one coming up. But this was kind of interesting. So, Ocasek remains standing and dry because he's using magic, and that's what it's implying. He's using magic to walk on water. And how they did that was they used the Hilton family house in Beverly Hills, which Kathy Hilton had leased to the band, a plexiglass platform set under the surface of the water. Now, the most interesting thing about this is the platform collapsed on the first take and had to be adjusted to support Ocasek's weight. So the first time he got on there, it collapsed. So they had to redo it. It doesn't say any more about it, but I wonder if he was on it or if somebody else was on it to test it. It might have been funny if we heard that he took a dip in the water because of that, but who knows? Maybe we'll find that out later. Anyway, check out this video. It's a great song. I love this song. It was one of the staples of my childhood, like seeing this video all the time on MTV. Okay, let's move on to our next song. So our next song from Heartbeat City is You Might Think. It's the number 3 track on the album. sung by Rick Ocasek. It was the first single from Heartbeat City, and it peaked at number 7 in the U.S. and number 8 in Canada. It also reached number 1 on the mainstream rock track charts in the U.S., and it was the band's first song to do so. In the U.K., it only got up to 88, which it probably deserved to go higher than that. Maybe they didn't have all these videos in the UK, but this song was so unique for the music video. As you can see in the pictures, it's probably the most famous one for. They went all out for the digital technology. And this is when the digital technology was in its infancy. So they pushed the boundaries and spent a ton of money on this. And it got loads of airplay on MTV during the time. And so the videos at that time were used as a marketing tool to sell the albums. And this one really ratcheted up and sold a lot of copies of the album. I mean, it's so unique. So the music video is one of the first to use computer graphics, as you can see here. And the video features Ocasek and model Susan Gallagher in a series of quirky encounters. Ocasek and model Susan Gallagher were in this whole thing, and Ocasek appears in the bathroom mirror, as you can see up above. He's inside a large periscope that pops up in her bathtub. I didn't show that one. He's in her mouth, drilling the teeth when she goes to the dentist, which is kind of weird and unusual. He's as a fly, which you see over here, probably one of the most iconic portions of the video. He's as King Kong on the Empire State Building. He's as a robot monster in the movie theater and other incarnations on this. The rest of the band appears together and separately throughout the video, and they all appear in the movie theater scene. Keyboardist Greg Hawkins plays the dentist in the scene in which Ocasek gets jackhammering a tooth in the girl's mouth. In the King Kong scene, the other three members, guitarist Eric Easton and bassist Benjamin Orr and drummer David Robinson, are paired off in two planes flying around Ocasek as he's playing King Kong. So really, really interesting, fascinating. So unique. You might think won the first MTV Music Video Award for Video of the Year, and was nominated for 5 more awards: Best Special Effects, Best Art Direction, Viewer's Choice, Best Concept Video, and Most Experimental Video at the 1984 MTV Music Video Awards. The video also won 5 awards: Best Video, Best Conceptual, Most Innovative, Best Editing, and Best Special Effects at Billboard's 1984 Video Music Awards, and 4 awards: Best Achievement in Music Video, Best Editing in Music Video, Best Engineering in Music Video, and Best Camera Work in a Music Video at the Videotape Production Association's 1985 Monitor Awards. So this video was just fantastic. Like I said, it was revolutionary. It was ahead of its time. It won all these awards. One of the most unique things also about it was at the very end, where Ocasek kind of goes like this and removes his face, and all the different elements of the video start tumbling out of it like it's flowing down that water. And finally we get the Rick Ocasek fly, who smashes into the screen, and it appears the end at the end of the video. This video is kind of creepy, to be honest, because it's stalkerish. It flat out is a stalker video, and it just kind of, but you can't take your eyes off the technology. And back then you were like, oh my gosh, how did they do that? Kind of crazy. I mean, you see up there, he's her lipstick. It just was so unique for back then. Give this video a look. The song is very catchy. Great song. Awesome video. Still kind of creepy, but kind of fun as well. Our last video is The Cars. My favorite song by The Cars. One of my all-time favorite songs of all time. It's called Drive. It was released in July of 1984. It was the 3rd single from the album. It was written by Rick Ocasek, but it's sung by Benjamin Orr. And it's the highest charting single that The Cars had. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 at number 3. It was number 5 on the adult contemporary charts. Number 4 on re-entry in 1985 in the United Kingdom. It got up to number 4 as well. Number 4 in West Germany, number 6 in Canada, and number number 3 in Ireland and number 5 when it had re-entry, and we'll talk about that in 1985. So this song was one of their biggest hits of all time, and it's a great, fantastic song. The song's associated with Live Aid, and let me tell you kind of what happened. So they sang it live at the Philadelphia event, but it was also used as the background for clips, a montage showing the starving children in Ethiopia and the reason for the need in Africa. And it kind of goes with it a little bit because what they're talking about in the dire situation for the food for those children and for their starving people. The song kind of has some elements that fit that. And so what happened was, because they had such success with Live Aid, it was re-released and went straight up the charts, especially in the UK and all over. And so when they re-released it, it raised £160,000 for the band Aid Trust. And Ocasek, when he was going to London, he was able to present the check to the charity's trustee, Midge Uri, with the check for the whole amount when he was in London in 1986, promoting his solo album. So just great, classic. So glad they released this. So glad they were able to raise that kind of money for such a great cause. So it was just fantastic. So in retrospective review of the single, AllMusic journalist Donald A. Rocasco praised the song for being a gorgeous ballad that matches heartfelt songwriting to alluring electronic soundscape. The music reflects the lyric tone and the lovely melody that rises and falls in a soothing yet sad fashion. So really, really interesting. So the other interesting thing about this song is that it influenced Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney was working on his 1986 album Press to Play and made some comments saying that he had taken some from Drive from the Cars, and he used some of that inspiration to write some of the songs on that album. So it really had a really cool influence. So the music video is unique. It was directed by actor Timothy Hutton, and it featured a then 19-year-old model actress, and I hope I don't mess this name up, Polina Pritsakova. I hope I got that right. Who became Rick Ocasek's third wife and was his wife up until the time they separated and he passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. The video alternates between shots of Orr sitting in a disguised nightclub facing mannequins posed at the bar as customers and bartender, and scenes that depict the breakdown of a relationship between Ocasek and Pritsakova. Ultimately left alone, the woman cries and laughs hysterically for a time before visiting the nightclub. She sadly looks in through a smeared window at the stage on which tuxedo-clad mannequins that you can see up here in the top left are the band members posed with their instruments as if playing the show, and turns to walk away as the video ends, and she kind of ends up in a mental institution that you see up top. And it's very interesting, very heartfelt, very unique song. And I've heard different interpretations about it, that it's about trying to help somebody that you love with a drug or alcohol problem. It may go deeper than that. But the idea is that somebody that you love has lost control of their life, and it's like you're pushing me away, but who's gonna pick you up? Who's gonna be there for you? Who's gonna help you out? Because we do need each other. We always need each other in different aspects of our lives. And so it's a unique message. It's a great song. Go look it up on the video. Listen to the lyrics. I really love this song. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, this is Heartbeat City from the Cars. Check out this album if you haven't. It's a great one, and we'll see you on the next one.